who are you most compatible with as an INFJ? And who would make the best life partner for you? Tune in to today's show to find the answers to these questions and more. There are many factors to consider when you're trying to figure out with whom you'll be most compatible. You need to think about worldview, family, values, and ultimate goals, just to name a few. That said, there's a lot to be gleaned from your personality when it comes to determining with whom you'll be most compatible. And that's where I'd like to start today, taking a look at your personality and seeing what it can tell you about the types of people that you will connect with best. When you look at your INFJ personality, you'll first see that the mindset that drives you the most and that really influences the way you think is a mindset or cognitive function called introverted intuition. So first and foremost, you need to keep in mind you are first and foremost an intuitive. So you'll probably get along best with other intuitives. People who see the big picture, who look for meanings, who make connections, who enjoy thinking about the future, who like new ideas. Those types of people are the kinds of people that you're going to connect with best. And if you find another intuitive, you will be less likely in a lot of ways to butt heads because you're going to gravitate toward the same sorts of things. A second consideration is the second most influential part of your personality, the side of you that's extroverted and that makes people see you as a really caring person. It's called extroverted feeling and it's abbreviated FE. So because you have feeling as your decision-making function, you might want to consider pursuing a feeler because feelers are going to make decisions and generally value the same sort of things that you do. You'll be less likely to butt heads about differences when it comes to major decisions. Now, both thinkers and feelers know how to include impersonal logic or personal logic depending on the situation. But we each, depending on our decision-making style, feeling, or thinking, are going to lean more toward one than the other. And when there's some differences between you and your partner, this can create some challenges. So being two feelers together in a relationship can smooth over potential conflicts. At this point, we could continue with this train of thought and look at your other two functions as well as introversion and extroversion, judging and perceiving, and a number of other factors. But I'm going to throw you a curveball and ask an important question. Is it better to be alike or different? Do you want to be the same as your partner or do you want to have a lot of differences? Let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of each sort of relationship. As we've already talked about, there are many pros to sharing similarities with your future partner, some of which include the fact that you're just going to see the world the same way, which can be great for promoting harmony in your relationship because you're naturally going to connect over your decisions. You're going to connect over the types of information that you focus on and your general ways of thinking. Another bonus to having the same or similar personality qualities is that you'll share many of the same interests. So you may both be into reading psychology books, or you may both enjoy exploring beautiful places, or you may both love music. You're just naturally going to find things that you'll connect with. And all of these bonuses can be great for promoting a healthy, positive, enjoyable relationship between the two of you in little to no time. What about the cons of being two people who are very alike? If you're both intuitives, one of the challenges that you'll probably face quickly is the everyday practical side of life and who's going to own up to doing that or how you're going to divvy it up. That could be a potential source of conflict because neither of you will probably like doing the dishes, keeping the house clean, or grocery shopping. You might like cooking depending on how you express your creativity. But some kind of everyday practical chore, maybe it's paying the bills, is going to become a source of frustration. And either both of you are going to wait around for it to get done, or you're going to drag your feet too long and maybe it'll get too dirty and someone could get sick, or maybe someone will take the initiative most of the time but never really like doing it. So he or she will begin to harbor a grudge or become bitter. none of these situations is great. And while you can work through it for sure, it's just a challenge to keep in mind. Another challenge that comes to mind is the fact that to some extent, you're both going to be occupying the same niche. In other words, if you think very similarly, then you're going to have the same strengths and gifts, and the other one might not appreciate what you have to contribute as much as if the two of you were different. Furthermore, you might compete to have the better ideas and feel frustrated if one is consistently coming up with the ideas, or if you're just not, again, getting the appreciation and encouragement from your spouse or significant other that you'd like to receive. Finally, even though you're going to share a lot of the same interests, if you're both very much the same, there could be conflict due to lack of variety and also blindness to what each other is missing with the world, because there are so many different preferences. Some people are extroverts, some people are sensors, some people are thinkers, and some people are perceivers. There's a lot to be gained from seeing these other perspectives in the world, and if you are missing out on them, you might be missing out on some important parts of life that you could get if you were connected with a person of a different type than you. For example, if you marry an extrovert, that person will get you out of the house and connect you with people and experiences that you might never ever get to experience otherwise. If you marry a thinker, she could help you to think more logically, or he could help you to think more logically and to remove yourself from the equation when it would be helpful to do so, like when you're buying a car or you're buying a house. Those can be helpful times to think objectively about your decision and not weigh in too much what other people are saying, feeling, or thinking. What are some of the pros of differences in your relationship? Well, I've kind of already leaned towards some of them, but just to name them again, you will complement one another. So if one of you is a great idea person, like you probably are, or a very creative person, and the other is very practical, well, then one person can bring some of the imagination, fun, and variety, the ideas into the relationship, whereas the other one can provide the steady, day-to-day, practical provisions that are necessary to living in the real world, like keeping the laundry clean, doing the dishes, making the food. Now, of course, both partners will need to contribute to this, but one person can spearhead the operation in one department, so to speak, and the other person can spearhead the operation in the other. So there'll be a nice balance or complement between the two of you. And in addition, each of you will appreciate the strengths that the other brings. Now, that said, in a minute, we'll talk about some of the conflict that can arise from there. That's probably obvious. Another plus of being married to someone who's different from you is the variety that will show up in your life, because one person is definitely going to gravitate toward things that interest him or her, and they're not going to be the intuitive, feeling, introverted, judging sort of preferences that you have. They're going to be whatever that other person has, namely extroversion, thinking, sensing, and perceiving, which are out of order, but you get the point. And those things are going to give you some variety, help you get some good, healthy experiences that can make life fun, and which leads to the third plus, stretch and grow you. And you as an INFJ, I'm pretty sure, appreciate personal growth. So one of the best ways to grow as a person is to get connected to someone else who thinks differently than you, and they can really help balance out your personality. Now, I'm a big proponent of zeroing in on your strengths and really developing them, but there's a lot to be said for experiencing things that you wouldn't naturally gravitate toward and learning and growing in areas which you are weak. So this other person will really stretch you and help you to operate more smoothly in your weaknesses. And I can give you an example. Like I mentioned earlier with thinking, if someone else is a thinker, they can help you think more logically and less personally. My wife has certainly done that for me. She's an ISTJ, and she has a way of removing herself from the situation and just looking at the cold, hard facts when she makes a decision. And she's helped me to learn to think that way so that I'm not always considering what the people will think about my decision or how they'll think about me or how it'll affect the relationship. Now, I still do that primarily, But there are situations like when I'm making a purchase or when I'm calling into customer service and I'm giving a fair complaint based on what's happening, that I need to be more logical and straightforward. And her help has been a big plus for me. And then some of the cons of being married to someone who is different than you are that you are going to probably experience some conflict just because you see the world differently, like we've talked about before. One of you is going to want to focus on the here and now if you marry a sensor, or on the past and the way you've always done things, the specific routine and the details that are outlined in the manual when you put together that piece of furniture that you bought from IKEA, and they're going to want to follow every single step. Well, you're going to want to get the piece of equipment out and just try to put it together all on your own without looking at the manual if you're somebody like me. Those sort of things can create conflict in the relationship. And that's just a small example. They could be bigger scenarios like buying a house, or like how you should spend your day, or what your life goals should be. And of course, you should talk about these things beforehand, but they certainly can generate conflict between the two of you. There's also the challenge of communication. And when you're focused on two different worldviews, be they the here and now or the logical side of life, like STs would focus on, or helping people like NFs, such as you and me, would focus on, there's going to be conflict because both of you are thinking about what's most important to you. It's just not the same. So you're going to want to try to communicate, but you're going to miss each other initially until you can get on the same wavelength and learn to express what's going on in your mind. This is especially true of introverts who happen to do a lot of their thinking within their heads and can be prone to assuming the other person knows what he or she is thinking when that's really just not the case. If you marry someone who's very different than you, it can also be a challenge to find common interests between the two of you. And my wife and I struggle with this too. She likes to focus on her projects. When she has free time, she'll get behind her sewing machine and work on a new piece of clothing or a curtain or a gift for a family member. And I will come over to my computer and I will write, or I'll record a podcast, or I'll make a video, or I'll play my guitar, or I'll do something creative, and we will sit beside each other and not talk to each other for however long we have to ourselves on Friday night or whatever night it is. So while that can be kind of nice to not be interrupted by the other person and to have that downtime, it's not always good for the relationship. And finding a common interest that draws the two of you together can be a challenge for the two of you to work through. I'll leave you with these parting thoughts to wrap up. Be open to personalities of all types. Focus on finding someone who shares your core values. And remember that there's no perfectly compatible type for you as an INFJ. Even an INFJ relationship has its potential challenges. So do your research and go into the relationship with your eyes wide open. Just don't spend too long doing your research, because if you're anything like me, you'll research till you're blue in the face and not take the action that you need to take to get to know someone else. Before you go into any relationship, it's wise to really understand who you are, what your needs are, what your strengths are, and what makes you tick. And I've written a book recently that I'd love to give to you for free called the INFJ Personality Guide. And I wrote this to help you understand yourself, reach your potential, and live a life of purpose. It explains the mindsets that drive your personality, and it answers some commonly asked questions or challenges that INFJs face. So you can grab a free copy of this book by texting the letters INFJ to the number 444999, or you can visit ispeakpeople.com/INFJ-personality-guide, and I will post that link in the description below this video. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it helpful. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to do that. I'm creating new content each week for INFJs just like you. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.